the collective. We have another fantastic show for you planned out today. Very excited. Tip, we haven't seen you in a while. Great to have you on. Dean, it's been a little while. Good to have you. Seb, always good to have you on the Days of Lavoie. And today we are going to be starting playing the game. And I'm very excited about that. But while I'm doing that, make sure y'all are doing this. Hit the like button, subscribe, hit the notification bell, do all that good stuff. You get your emails in the morning whenever we go live, which is, of course, every day. Now, if you have any thoughts, questions, or comments, by all means, put them up in the comments section, just like this, so we can engage them right away. Daniel Labonte, I've missed me some Days of Lavoie. Good to have you back, Dan. It's good to see you. So, we're going to hit that right away. Shaun, I'm going to come to you. We're going to play the game. What is the game? How do we play the game? What are we even doing today?
Yeah, sure. So I'll start us off with maybe not a definition, but a loose trajectory that I'm sure the guests will fill in better than I can. So throughout my life, I've always considered life to be the game of life, we'll call it. And you can call it the path, you can call it the trajectory, you can call it all kinds of things. Throughout history, there's been many references to how we live our lives, the fullness of our lives, how to live a good life, the bestest life. There's lots of ways to think about the game of life. For me, I like to think of the game within the game. And I'm sure I'll get into that maybe later in the conversation, but the game of life is not enough for me. I need to turn it into a game within a game. And by that, I mean, I need to make it fun. So no matter what I've got in front of me in life, no matter how hard it is or how challenging or how much adversity I'm going to be stepping into, as I'm stepping into it, I'm looking for a way to create a game within that game that I'm about to step into, to make it fun for me, to learn a new thing for me, to make it about me to some degree. So this game that we have in front of us, it's a solo journey. And I know that that's going to sound unfair or unusual or incorrect, particularly since I'm married and I've got kids. So it's not a solo journey in that sense, but it is a solo journey because all along the way, we're the only ones responsible to make these singular decisions in the microsecond that is in front of us. If we're living in the now as a solo player, I feel that it's then our job to engage in others around us, to draw them into our game or interact with their game. But at the end of the day, the game that we play is a solo game that I like to turn into a game within the game so that I can play with others in a way that suits the way I live my life.
Dang, all right. Well, that is the definition for the day. What do you guys think? Dean, let's start with you.
The first time I ever heard play the game was my time in the military. So it's interesting to hear Shaun's perspective on how he views it. So play the game, and Tip will probably relate to this. When we're in the military, if your boss or a sergeant major had an idea and you didn't really agree to it, you probably hear from your seniors just say, just play the game, just go along with it. Which for me, I never really played the game. I saw the people that played the game were those who were career soldiers. They wanted to they wanted to play that game, play the system and, do what they needed to do. And so for me, I was like, no, I was always about winning. In a game, there's a winner and a loser. And so for me, it was always about winning. It didn't have to be the stereotypical, I can see Tip laughing, the stereotypical way of being a soldier. We used to call them like, I don't know. We used to call them like camp commandos, and it's not as being homophobic. It's people who don't actually do anything outside the camp gates, and they were the ones who always played the game and always progressed through their careers. Where there was operators like myself and Tip, who I probably don't want to put in the same category as me, Tip, because I definitely didn't play the game and ended up in military prison for it. But but it's interesting how you've then just switched it to life. I haven't really thought about playing the game as a transition now in what I'm doing. So I was really interested to hear your point on there. But play the game for me, when I first heard it was in the military, and it's basically meant do as you're told. Don't answer back.
I like it.
I can't. Well, I love Dean. He's an absolute legend. But I can get him straight away because we go back a long way, and I know exactly where he's coming from. But for me, exactly the same perspective. We all, I understand, and I can empathize completely with Dean. But for me, the game, the rules of a game is, no matter what we say, the rules of a game, there are rules within a game. So a game, to play the game, there are rules. They can be rules or can we consider them as guidelines, but that is so that there's certain rules in life, there's certain rules on operations, whether it be rules of engagement or whatever else. There's all rules and guidelines. But to be a winner, or is it taking part? I'm a big taking part, but give 100%. And sometimes you'll win, sometimes you won't. You'll have a bloodied nose and you'll sort of like come back around, but you'll go back into the game again. So, I mean, that's what I see. There's things, but the people that do win in the game are those people that are able to be dynamic and improvise and overcome and think out of the box back in, stand inside those sort of like rules of, of life as such. So you're playing the game, but the ability to do well in that game is to be dynamic and sort of be resourceful. But it is, I mean, everything's a game. And if you think about it as well, I'm a rather than a perfect Royal Marines commando, I'm a slightly perfect actor. But in the world of theatre, you do a play. The reason it's called a play is because you play, and exactly like Shaun said, there's got to be fun there. There's got to be fun. So when you're on there, it's going to just go, whatever you're doing, whether it's operations, whether it's life. If you're not smiling during any, there's going to be times where you ain't going to smile. But if it's not fun, that's where you're not playing the game properly, I think. So you can see it's just that rules and guidelines and being dynamic. That's why everything's a game, isn't it?
Yeah. Seb, what do you think?
My brain is still smoldering from all these injects. I never actually considered this, which is good. Obviously, we're starting something from scratch, and a few of us have never really spent the time thinking about this. But as the gentlemen were discussing their sort of viewpoints on that, I got to thinking, have I played a game? And I certainly have. I've played a game in a professional settings, as Dean was alluding to, but I have not played the game in perhaps always in the way it was expected to. But I made a game within the game, as Shaun discussed earlier, by trying to play the game and have courage of conviction and have all of the things that I brought to the game, but instead of going head to head all the time, I really tried to flank, certain challenges that I had, because it's really easy to get sucked in the old, well, I don't play the game like everybody else. Everybody else is trying to achieve X, Y, and Z, and I'm not interested in that, or that's not my priority. I'm an operational person. I'm, all of those things. And now what you're doing is you're going head to head with everyone. And what I do find is a lot of guys that never played the game went head to head with everyone. And although they were successful in their careers, they could have been a lot more successful in their careers, but they didn't need to necessarily compromise their integrity to do so. They just needed to communicate differently. They just needed to, bring their point in a different way, and or communicate it differently, or whatever the case may be. But it's really interesting how we sometimes feel that we need to go necessarily head to head with everybody that we disagree with, or everybody that we feel thinks differently than us in that context. And so for me, it was always about, those little cubes with the colors, the Rubik's cubes. Yeah, I can't pronounce that word. Sorry, guys. I don't speak English or French. And those little cubes, I always saw humans as those little cubes to a certain extent. How it's not somebody's responsibility to adapt themselves to me. How do I learn to work with them? How do I learn to communicate with them? So if there are challenges there, somebody is really rank oriented or an egomaniac or whatever the case may be, I always made it a game to figure out how I would connect with them so that I may move the needle forward when everybody else failed. And I what I did find is that we had, the typical guys that would jump on the bandwagon of not wanting anything to do with that person. There's a certain leader or whatever the case may be. And this guy here that somehow made it a game to try to find out exactly how I would be able to move the needle forward for my guys or for the unit or whatever the case may be, and figure those things out. And a lot of the times I would have the guys come to me after and say, how did this happen, and how did you manage to get him on board and all these other things? Well, it was all about figuring out the games within the game.
It's really fascinating because when you're talking about Rubik's cubes are algorithmic, right? In order to solve a Rubik's cube, you need to proceed with the correct algorithm in the correct
No,
with the correct procedure.
No, it's not an algorithm. It's a pattern. You're analyzing a pattern. You're working some math, but you're not observing an algorithm. You're observing a pattern, and you're correcting a pattern, trying to form the correct pattern. And that's the game. That's playing the game. And so to Dean's point and Tip's point and to Seb's point, it's the same as my point that when I joined the military, I was in a new game. I was being taught a new game. And the game sometimes didn't work for me. In fact, sometimes I had to do some high-speed marching into offices. Left, right, left, right, left, right, left. And so, because, sometimes I struggled within the system that was called the game of the army. It didn't always work for me. Maybe like Dean and Tip, I had a little bit of an edge to me. Maybe I had a little bit of, rebelliousness in me. I didn't always see eye to eye with everyone perfectly. So I had my way. And sometimes I had to bump into some edges and get a little bit scuffs on me. But I had to learn the game my way. I couldn't learn it his way or her way. I had to learn it my way. And my way is a different way than maybe a lot of people. But it's my way to learn. I'm not trying to learn his way. I'm trying to learn me. And so that's what I dug into when I was a young buck in the military. I tried to understand Shaun, young Shaun, as I proceeded forward in my military career. And for sure, as Tip said, the rule sets in the military are different than a lot of places. So I started learning the rule set. And there were times when those rule sets didn't really work for me. So I had to create a game within the game in order to not encourage myself, but in order to better move around the obstacle in front of me, so that I wouldn't get bitter and twisted or whatever the case is. Like, life is hard, man. Life is hard in the military. And you're always going to bump up against things that are tough. And when those tough things show up, if you don't have a rich rule set within you or a rich ability to modify the rule set in a out-of-the-box way, well, you're going to bump into a lot of hard things. And every time you bump into that hard thing, if you can't spin it in your head to turn it into a positive with a game within the game, well, now you're kind of on a shallow track, or a veneer track, as I used to think of it, whereby you don't have the depth of game within you to be able to manage the game when it gets really complex. So I decided for myself as a young buck in the military to take everything in front of me and figure out a way to, and I know it's going to sound dumb, to amuse me. And so it's not that I was looking to have a good laugh, and it's not like I wanted to be entertained. What I'm saying is it had to be something that made me feel like, oh, whatever that means to anyone else out there who's listening. So it was my job to spin the problem in front of me to make it a game. Not a casual jokey McJoke game, but a game that had me engaged. I mean, when you sit down and play Monopoly, you can play it with like ferocity if you really want to win. Or you can sit back and have a couple of beers and let your car go around the board and not really care. If you want to play your Monopoly game like you're not in it, well, by the time you've lost, you're unaware that you were losing. But if you're at the Monopoly board and you're playing the game like to win, whatever that means for anyone, now you know each dice roll. Now you know what the players are doing. Now you're in the freaking game. And to me, to get in the game, I've got to feel like I'm playing the game. And so to me, the unfolding of life as I'll say it, as a casual victim of the the world around you as if you can't control it is crazy thought to me. We're in full control of this game. This game that we're in right now, this podcasting game, as we speak right now with each other. Though we're not playing a goofy game, it's still a game of life, and we're in it to win it as we're bouncing ideas off each other. Otherwise, we'd all be falling asleep and heading off to wash our cars. So I think the game is life. And to play life well, you've got to sit at the table and really engage with it and understand who you're playing with and whether you like playing with them or not and whether you like winning or not. There's many ways we could tear it apart, I suppose.
Absolutely. Yeah. Dean?
Yeah, I think sort of a tip earlier, I think you made complete sense that you need rules. There needs to be rules of engagement. So like I say, going back to the military, again, you need to have rules and laws. You need discipline, no insubordination. Otherwise, there'll be anarchy. And whether that's in the military or whether that's in society, that's why there are, lords of the state, lords of the land, and stuff like that. But I think where, as I progressed in my career and I was in a position where I could challenge certain rules, and I don't mean rules as in the basic military rules. I mean these are the SOPs. As you know, Tip and the guys, every time you went out to Afghanistan, the enemy were aware of your TTPs and your SOPs. And so we had to change the rules. We had to change the way we operated. So there's certain rules of the game which everyone needs to adhere to. Otherwise, there would be anarchy. But it's been in a position brave enough to challenge those changes as well. I've been a couple of times on operations and someone said, well, you have to do it like this. I said, why? Because we've done it like that before. But yeah, you need to, if you want to win, you may have to change them rules. So that's where I sort of come in. I don't always challenge my sergeant major with everything. If I generally feel that he's probably got this wrong, or there's another way of skinning the cat, as a phrase that we use in the UK, then I think you should be in a position to do that. For me, and from our, all our backgrounds in the military, there was no second place. It was always about mission success, and so we had to change those rules sometimes. I'm not saying the basic rules, which is the foundations of the military.
Yeah. Tip, you got any thoughts?
Oh no, with that I support Dean said that straight away. But I think even when we first came together, me and Stotty, 25 years ago, on ops, and again, the rules are there. The TTPs are probably completely outdated because we're in that transformation into the digital battlefield. And the fundamentals remain the same, but the way we were dynamic and improvise, and Stotty was part of some incredible work that we've done out there with really resource-wise, we're talking a shoestring here, but the force multiplying effect that we gave as a very small organization was pretty mind-blowing. Stotty, you agree with that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, no, it was amazing.
And I think with it as well is the fact is this game, wherever the game is, and like Shaun, you said, it's the game in life. The game in life, though, it's very hard because people consider a game like whether a board game, whether it's sports or whatever else out there. There's certain sports where you're an individual playing tennis. Again, you're not exactly an individual. When you're on the court, you're playing tennis. When you're a Formula One driver, when you're in that car, it's you against the rest of the thing. But behind that, there's teams to support each of those players. But for me, my favorite games are team sports. And I think being in the military and in being alive for a society or in a family, it's a team sport. So you've always got those players that you've got to be part of that team. So, and everything we've sort of, like Shaun, you said there, it's very about us and we and my, as an I, it's not, it's very much we lean forward. We play the game. We work as a team. We're dynamic. And also then you empower those different people there to have those little, should we say, they call them disruptive sort of ideas to go, and they revolutionize what you're doing in a nanosecond. And that little thing as a team, you go, I like that. Let's get on with it. So you're still playing the game, but you're all working, but you need that input because as an individual, I think if you become that strength of mindset where nothing else is only yours is the important thing, I think you'll lose out on what is important in the game. And the things because the games I like rugby. If you see rugby play well, the World Cup's on in a minute, and Ireland are doing extremely well. but if you watch rugby, the drill, the discipline, the rules of the game are there. But the ones that are good at it are physically stronger. they're more robust, they're more dynamic, they can improvise, they can do this, they don't give up. All of those games in that game, that to me, if you reflect that onto military life or society, I just think it's just magical. And if you can keep those tenets in a very, sort of, we say, positive, kind, it's hard to say about rugby, in it, but in a way that, you know, you're honourable, you're upstanding and forthright when you're playing this game. But all those efforts that I think work well. But it's a very much a team effort, because there's the words you said there. I know the team thing I think is really important in playing the game. But there's another thing that saying that isn't as, should we say, I think it's more derogatory. So you're a game player. So that means you're playing the game. No, I'm playing the game. But if you're a game player, so that means you're not part of the team anymore. You're trying to work it. You're trying to work against the person that's got the responsibility or the risk manager. You know, and you're a game player. There's a different thing there. It's a different side to it, I think.
It's interesting. Seb, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I just like the what Dean was talking about with the adaptability and accountability, you know, within the game and challenging the status quo, and that is a critical piece. And sometimes challenging the status quo is for us, it's for ourselves. We're not challenging anybody else or anybody else doing it wrong. Sometimes we just have to do it internally. And I, you know, I understand what Shaun was talking about when he said ultimately this game is played alone. It starts alone and it ends alone. That's a fact. And we all have our predicated path. And within those two left and right of arcs, there's people that we meet that share the journey with us. And we do, you know, certain things with them, and we walk for a while and then we move on. And so I can see that as well as being a part of the process, for sure.
Shaun, you got any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, Tip nailed it for me, because there's two very distinct kinds of people when we're talking about playing the game. There's people who play the game, and then there's the game players. And here in Canada, you know, maybe a term would be maybe work in the system, or scheme in the game. Might be other words that I hear thrown around here in Canada or North America. And generally speaking, I couldn't stand people who work the system like that. People who work the chain of command and just simply claw their way up, kind of almost as
Greasy
empty
pole.
shells. Yeah, greasy. That's right. Just they're playing a game, but for the wrong reasons. They're playing the game for glory or self-satisfaction, or they're playing the game because they need a sense of power, or they need a sense of position. And that stuff never really interested me. In fact, quite the contrary. Every time that I got promoted, first of all, I couldn't believe it had happened. And second thing, it annoyed me. It annoyed me that someone had promoted me, because I was quite happy doing what I was doing with the troops. I liked hanging out with the troops, man. And so a promotion to me was actually a bit discouraging in a sense, because I don't know, I didn't think I deserved it. I didn't want it. It shouldn't have happened, all of that good stuff. But there's people who love on that stuff, who chase it like it's their main focus. They can't wait to get promoted. They can't wait to get that spotlight. They can't wait to march with the musical band. And that just was not me. I just wanted to freaking crack it out of the park in my job that I had at that moment with my peers that were on my left and right, so that we could kick that ass. That's all I was focused on, was kicking that ass, not kissing that ass. And I know that,
Like that.
I don't like to say things like that too often over here on the podcast, but it really kind of makes the point that, and I'm not saying you're either in one camp or you're in the other. Of course, it can be hybridized. And sometimes I think in life, I've come closer to maybe getting too close to kissing a bit of ass. And I realized, like, oh my goodness, what just happened there? I'm getting too familial with this person. I'm too focused on trying to do good that I'm kind of compromising my own standards of being diluted by the spotlight to some degree, or deluded by the spotlight. So I think while I'm playing the game, I'll speak for Shaun, I have a very tight rule set on my game within the game. So I try to make it fun, as I said. I try to make it challenging, as I said. And I like to win. My win conditions are very clear for me, though. I will never compromise my win conditions so that I'm putting it over on someone, so that I'm screwing someone over, as it were. I mean, the game has to be fair. If I'm playing a game, I want to play the game fairly with the people all around me, unless the circumstances call for a completely different kind of game where there is no prisoners taken, we'll call it. So, to me, the game has to be fun and it has to be righteous to some degree. If I'm sitting down at a Monopoly table, I'm not sitting down at the Monopoly table with my own set of dice in my pocket or my own wad of fake cash in my back pocket. I'm going to sit down, play the game right, and see how the chips lay at the end of the game.
That's an interesting point, and I want to come back to something Tip said just a second ago. You were talking about rugby, and I was thinking, what you're talking about, Shaun, is the people that will. There's a line between having a trick play and cheating, right? And sometimes those lines come really close together. But I think that's the line that you're talking about between, like, you'll never cross that into that point where you're now actually cheating, you're going against the rules, but you'll push the boundaries of those rules up to the edge. Am I getting that right there, Shaun?
I'll always flex within the matrix. I always will. I'll try to break it, man. I will try to make change by flexing in the digital sphere or within my life, 100%. But what I won't do is flex with a cheat or flex with a hack or flex with a shortcut. And so to best explain that, like in the middle of a 24-hour solo mountain bike race, in a freaking world championship, by the way, some goof shortcut the course. Like in the middle of the night, he was riding on night lights, as we all do. And I watched him cut the course, a little shortcut. And off he went. And I thought, what a freaking loser, man. He doesn't know how badly he just lost yet. But years from now, he'll learn how badly he lost. And screw him. Because that's the lesson that he needs to learn years from now. When he looks at himself in the mirror and thinks, I'm a shortcutter. It doesn't matter whether you win or lose in that moment. You're always going to be a shortcutter years and years and years later. You can't change that look in the mirror, man, because you know you shortcutted. And so there's a way to play the game to win, and there's a way to play the game to win that's wrong. And so anyone who plays it wrong gets to learn that lesson after the event.
Tip, you got any thoughts on that?
No, it's. I mean, it is completely right, but I do like the whole thing about people growing and blooming. Is you've always got to push the boundaries. So whatever you do, I mean, I think that was my appetite for what it was like when my job as a Royal Marine was you just push everything to the max, and that's whether it's authority, that's whether it's partying, that's whether it's whether it's you're pushing you're in the mountains. I mean, I used to love. I mean, Stotty remembers. I used to love mountain training because mountain training, just up, especially in the Scottish Highlands, and the weather is absolutely pucker honking, and I loved it. I just had this bizarre smile on my face because you were pushing the envelope, and that everything was going to be challenging no matter what. And that's basically from navigation through to even to survivability, but with being at the end of whatever you were achieving to be in a fit state to fight. And I used to love it. I still love it. So everything you have to do, you have to push it to the max. And again, I've always been bounded by moral code. I've always been bounded by what's correct. I've always engaged when I believed and I was morally, felt it was right to engage, on operations as well. Because to me, I just had this massive moral component that realizes that you have to push everything to the max. I'm probably up to testing people's patience to the max quite a bit as well. But I think that's part of life and lets you grow. And remember, I'm sitting here with because I get my teeth fixed in a minute, so they've given me some falsies. So this is a bit like Scotty Vesey.
Well, Bobby.
And this is just part of that. And that comes from about 35 years ago, pushing it to the max. But I obviously lost, and I was against about 3 or 4 blokes and ended up getting my teeth kicked out. So it's just pushing that envelope just a bit.
Just
But
a
they'll,
bit.
they'll be all good shortly. Don't worry about it.
Dean, you got any thoughts on this?
Yeah, so I'm always for pushing the envelope, and I agree completely with Shaun. It has to be within the rules, because you need to be able to look at yourself in the mirror in the years to come and say that I did it and I did it the right way, whether you won or whether you came last. One thing, going back to tips earlier about, and Shaun, actually, there's two distinctions. There's the game player and there's the team player. There's not one course in the military where they're trying to identify game players. It's always team players. Every course I've ever been on as a student or as an instructor, you used to always look for those guys that sat on the bed knife sharpening. They're the ones you need to be cautious of, because they have no interest in the team. It's their own careers. So actually, when we leave the military, that's why we have an identity crisis, because we've gone from a team to now on our own, and we're always looking for that other tribe or that other team. So whether it's in acting and you're on the stage and you now have your team there, or whether my team at the moment here is my family. So it is. I don't think you're ever trying to identify, for positive reasons, the game player. It's always the team players, and we always want to be part of that team. I remember, actually, it's something you said, Tip, as well. My Sergeant Major, when I was in 5'9" Commando Recce Troop working with Tip and the boys from the Royal Marines, I went from sapper all the way through to sergeant and spent 7 years there. And my Sergeant Major, when I got promoted to sergeant, told me that I should no longer socialize with my junior NCOs. And I'm like, well, 90% of my troop is junior NCOs. And so unless you want me to be a loner, but I was like, no, you shouldn't be a game player. You get more respect being with those guys, doing what, asking of them, but doing what you're asking of them as well. So, and then the final one on the rugby, England are doing well as well. Ireland are doing well. obviously, really interesting. I watched Australia yesterday.
Yeah, Wales. Yeah.
Australia and Wales. Australia, you got 15. You can have 15 excellent players or 15 game players, but if they're not team players, then they're not going to be cohesive. So it's about it's not about having the best guys, it's about having the best team. And so that's a real distinction for me about the game players and team players, and not one military course I know positively wanted to identify those game players. They're always looking for team players.
It's quite weird to say that as well at the start, because especially in certain roles in the military, especially like the lone sniper, a sniper who's working by himself, if he's working in a PERT, or even if he's an operator working by himself, that I'd say is probably one of the loneliest tasks, isn't it? You think about it, especially if he's having to deliver lethality as well. But with that, I always think there's a reason he's there in that position doing it, is because he's part of a team. You know what I mean? So there's still, no matter, even though everyone, I think in the gaming world, they all look at if you're the lone sniper, you're this complete recluse who just goes out and kills people. We all know it's complete nonsense. Yeah. And the fact is that he's doing it because he's obviously disciplined enough to deliver the task on behalf of that team and for the good of his people. So I think that'll be good to clarify certain things like that there, because people can go, oh, you're in the military. No. Yeah. It's always about the team. Exactly what you said.
But as it's the team behind the scenes. So you have your lone sniper, but then you got other snipers out there on the ground who are part of that team. You have the comms team, you have the HQ. They're all, I always use the analogy, and I think it's the same in Canada and the US. Like for every SF operator to step off that plane, jump in take 7 other people you don't see, whether it's the armorer, whether it's the chef, whether it's the pilots. And so, and if one of them doesn't fulfill their role, or, it stops the whole operation. So you're right. The sniper is probably one of the loneliest, but they are part of a team behind the scenes. Yeah.
That goes back to the whole concept of the tip of the spear, right? They are the tip of the spear, sure, but there is a full spear behind it, and it doesn't work if it's just the little tip of the spear. Seb, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, just like everybody else on here, I think I was promoted 3 ranks above where I ever should have been or wanted to be. But somehow I did that without ever running somebody over, so to speak. And this speaks to what Shaun was talking about earlier about the courage of conviction, but the integrity of the process for me, it was critical, and I never was going to compromise on that, no matter what. There was no amount of ranks, no amount of anything that would have led to that. But just like Dean, I was also told, you kind of need to minimize how much socializing you do, and that's absolute garbage. Like there is no way that that's the case, and that's viable option when you have a team and the guys are trusting you, and all this good stuff. But sometimes you do have to walk beside the bandwagon and not necessarily jump on it, and sometimes you have to be the one that stops in front and says, "Hey, guys, we all know this isn't the case," right? Like so there is a time where there is a bit of a disconnect there, where you have to place yourself at a different angle so that you can bring a different lens for the rest of the team. So I really think that there's value to that. But as far as not engaging whatsoever, it's such an oversimplification. It seems like it should be simple on paper. Just you're now an NCO, so do not associate with your guys unless you're operationally engaged. Yeah, good luck with that. It sounds really good on paper, but it ain't gonna work out the way you expect it to. One of the interesting thing that Dean was saying was about playing the game, and people necessarily not saying anything about playing the game, or people not being selected to play the game. And I agree with that 100%. I think the reason why that is most tend to ignore the game, that the game even exists. It's almost like, hey, look here, nothing to see. We're doing everything we could, but there is something, an underground, so to speak, here, where it's not very popular, and therefore it's not being discussed. But it is a reality. Regardless of where we are in life, whether it's in life, in the military, in police, or whatever, there is an underlying, or there is an underground game being played by certain people, and we need to have the ability to recognize that that's occurring and how not to get sucked into it. And also, once we look at choosing our frequentation of the savages that we want to surround ourselves with, we need to have the ability to recognize what game they're playing, or what rule set are they playing. And I say this completely metaphorically, but what is the rule set that you're playing by? I know I can get in any game with any games with Shaun, because I know that we play the same integrity game. So I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about loyalty. I'm not worrying about him doing things for ulterior motives. He's established his character that way. And so it's less sort of daunting and frightening to engage with people like this. Whereas if you know that somebody has ran, a bunch of people over on account of their own self-advancement or career advancement, whatever the case may be, and it doesn't have to be in career, it can be in life in general, then I will tend to shy away from these people. And I don't really shy away, I just don't engage with them if I can help it. And so I think it's important to understand the rules, the fundamental rules that regulate my game playing, but it's also important to understand the rule set by which the people around me are playing.
Shaun, thoughts?
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. One in respect to the sniper, and then one in respect to what Sept just said. So as a sniper, laying out in the middle of, and I was a sniper, so laying out in the middle of a swamp, all by yourself, you can get all up in your head and think, woe is me, I'm all out here by myself. Or you can get with the reality of the moment, and that your comms network just alone has got a couple of hundred people on it. And who you got dropped off by is still waiting there to pick you up, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's how you spin it in your head, and it's how honest you are with yourself. And so the moment that you start getting a little down in the dumps about how you don't have a team around you, well, you've just got to extend your understanding of what the concentric circle is around you. And if you're scratching your head for a minute or two thinking, who's the closest in proximity to me right now in my team? And you've got to think back, and it's your aunt from when you were 6 years old. That's the proximity that you've got. Well, go seek a team. Get on a team that can help you for sure. But I think all of us have a lot of proximity around us. It's just that sometimes we don't truly think about how many people we have supporting us in that moment. But a good way to contextualize that is when you're out in a swamp and it sucks, I think that it should come pretty quickly to who you could reach out to in that moment that could be helpful. But people don't think that when they're just sauntering down a sidewalk on a sunny day, because life is good. Life is good and you haven't identified all the people that can help you in that moment. But the time that life gets bad, sometimes you can quickly understand who you can reach out to on your team to help you. And so I'm suggesting that start thinking about these things when times are good, who's on your team, for the time when things get bad, so that you can identify who your QRF is, as it were. The second thing I'd like to say is, to Seb's point, he is correct. In order to play a game, if I called Seb up and said, hey, let's meet between your house and my house, we're going to play a game, he might show up with a pool cue, and I might show up with a set of dice. And you know what we'll freaking do? We'll create a new game right then and there. Right there in the dirt. We'll start a new game that hopefully other people will want to play as well. But that's the fun part about being around cool people who get it. It doesn't matter what the massive game is that's all around us. The right people can play any game. But not just play any game. They can turn that any game into a fun game by creating a game within the game. Seb and I could stand there, him holding the pool cue, not looking cool, and me standing there with dice, looking cool because I brought my leather jacket. And we're going to turn a game into a game. The game within the game. That's right. With my silver dice. And so I think it's just a matter of understanding who you have around you. And instead of taking life so serious that you think the fate of the earth is going to be determined in this moment with Seb's pool cue and my dice, it's just another moment in time where we get to do good, where we get to create a new fun thing for ourselves and maybe for others, which is what we're doing over here on the collective, by the way. We're having fun. We're dropping some minor wisdoms. I'm learning from you guys, but the whole show as we're doing this is not so solo journeyed that one individual's tossing out all the wisdom. It's a collaborative game that we're playing right now. Unfortunately, Seb's still standing there with his pool cue, and I'm still standing here with my dice trying to make a game.
You know, I do have to
Can
say
I?
one
Can
thing.
I? Sorry.
I'll come back to you, Tip, in 1 second. Yes, there's no way that Seb would not look cool with a friggin' pool.
No, that's what I was going to say. John.
It's true. I'm just screwing him over right now. I'm playing my game within the game within the game.
within the game within the game. But
All I heard when Shaun was talking is blah 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 blah.
pretty consistent. Now, I had a question on this in terms of the support system. So I think that's such a great concept here. Is that we don't really think about the support systems in general at all. But if you think of when COVID happened and everything started to shut down, all of a sudden people started realizing the amount of support that it actually takes to just live every day, like grocers and gas station attendants, like all these things. That's all support too, is it not? But are we all on the same team then? Or are we all working for different teams? That's the question.
We're playing the game.
Playing the game. Who's playing the game though? What game are we playing?
The game of life, dude.
The game
That's
of
it.
life.
Just on that chance you said that, you know, when you mentioned COVID and that, and it's pressures, I think, because that was global pressures, we all felt a bit of it. We all got a bit COVID, so it didn't matter if you're that side of the pond or not. But I think, and this is not, I'm not being political, but I think because of the global economic situation and austerity and the cost of living, especially over this side, you know, UK and Europe, people really are struggling. And this is where, in the social aspects, to play the game is considerably harder, especially if you're, you know, on low income, you've got a family and things out there, and it's extremely hard. And this is where socially and culturally people need to play the game, you know, as in be part of it, be proactive, work for it, work on, you know, limited sort of resources and start upping the game and doing it. And you say, oh, it's very hard to say it when you're not in that position. I said, yeah, but if we had that culture and there was fun and they had the support, or they had more support to tap into to make them better, I think that still means part of playing the game. But I think for some people, and you know, definitely in different sections of the communities, really, really are struggling, and it is extremely sad, especially when they're good, hardworking people. But no matter what, making ends meet, you know, there's so many more pressures on them at the minute.
It's a tough one. Shaun, you got thoughts? I saw you.
Yeah,
nod.
sure. So we were having fun. And
Oh,
then,
sorry.
and no, we were having fun, and then Chance brought up COVID, and all of a sudden we were like speeding towards a brick wall. Wow. So I think that aspect of our recent history is simply just a different game that was being played at the time, and we all had to learn new rule sets in that moment on a weekly basis, almost as different things came down the pipe, as it were. And a lot of people had to adapt in that moment. And a lot of people are still adapting coming out of that moment. And to Tip's point, for people who were struggling at the time, it didn't improve their struggle. It made the struggle worse, I feel. And so everyone felt it around the globe, for sure. Different people felt it more than others, for sure. And I don't want to make light of it by saying, well, find a way to game the game, because that doesn't work for everyone right now who is really, really struggling. But I'm going to do it. I'm just going to say this. Life is difficult, man. I came up. My life wasn't that easy as a young buck. Well before I joined the Army, and in my family life, it wasn't ideal. And we all get dealt a tough hand from time to time. We'll call it the game of life is now a set of cards that you're playing. Well, sometimes the cards suck, but it's my turn to hang on for as long as I can to get a new set of cards when that next round comes around. And I'm going to play the cards that are given me each round and maximize them as best as I can while still doing this. And this is super important. Keep perspective on the fact that I am playing a game. The game of life, which is my responsibility to turn into a positive outcome, to play the game so well that I begin enjoying the game so well. I want to pursue my hands in a way that I look forward to the next hand. And whether that next hand is better or worse than the hand I just played, is inconsequential almost to me to some degree, because what I will do is take the hand I've got and have fun with it, as strange as that may sound. But that's how I like to live my life.
Mm-hmm. I think, I think on that, I probably would be, our story would be a perfect example is that I think, when COVID happened, yes, you're right, Tip, it was devastating for a lot of people, but also for other people improvised. People saw, right, this is a situation in front of me. I need to change the way that I sell product or whatever, and some successful businesses took off through that. Me and my family, we moved right in the middle of COVID, just before the second lockdown in the UK. It was like, right, we can either stay here and play the rules, or we seize this opportunity and we go. And that's what we did. And I understand it's really bad for a lot of people, but for us, it was the best move me and my family ever did. I went from being in lockdown for 23 hours a day to being able to walk all the time and being able to push forward with your businesses. So yeah, I think it is, you are dealt a hand of cards. And, I'm probably a bit more fortunate than other people, it wasn't the same for everyone, but you make the decision, it's about playing the rules of the game. These are the rules, but some of them can be challenged. I'm not going to get into the whole politics about the vaccination. The rules where you had to be locked down, people did that. These are the rules of vaccination. Not everyone adhered to those rules.
Yeah.
So it's been brave enough to challenge certain rules. There's some that you have to adhere to, otherwise, like I said, there's going to be anarchy. But it's everyone was dealt that hand, and people dealt with it in different ways. Some people like to follow rules. I know I've got family members who are like just strict with whatever the government say. But I'm like, well, I'm off. I'm going skydiving in Elsinore. So, it is. You're dealt a hand, but you make the decision for you, your family, and your team, as they say. Where was the other one I was going to go? It's gone, actually. Oh, no, actually, we're talking about, you mentioned earlier, you guys, about the team. Like, looking internally, sometimes like a sniper, you think that you don't have a team around you. And there's times in your life where you just look around, you've got you and your family. But if you look outwards, and I've done that a few times, I've looked outwards, and actually majority are all my military friends. I can call upon them anytime and actually still have a team of 400 guys whenever I want. And I call upon them because they've been tested before. I know their integrity. I know their discipline. You know, there was a project I did where I needed 150 tier 2 and tier 1 operators. Within a week, I got them. They came in from all the 4 corners of the world. And now I have 4 more new members here as well. So there's sometimes you can look internally, but actually sometimes just look externally. And as we know in the military, you can call a friend. I could call Scott Vesey or Bobby Vesey or Spam. I haven't seen them in about 3 years and almost carry on the same conversation. So, yeah, I think we do have a team out there. It's just maybe they're not always visibly in front of us.
Absolutely. Seb, you got any thoughts?
Just random thoughts on a variety of different subjects. But, you know, sometimes we get self-absorbed is what happens. You know, we get self-absorbed, and if you're a sniper on a position and there's mosquitoes around and it's stinky and you've been there, you've infilled, 16 hours before anything else happens, and it's easy to start sort of self-defeating and start questioning, what it is that you are doing and what it is that you are taking on, and it's important, and that's can be metaphorically applicable to the purpose in life. Like, what is my purpose? And I need to remember what the mission is and what is the goal here. I'm a, lethal Overwatch. I'm an observer. I'm reporting on things that could potentially be deadly to my team and all these other things. So you need to logically override these funks, and bring yourself back in line. I mean, you've temporarily turned into a victim. And we talk about this all the time. We talk about victim mentality, but victim mentality creeps on all of us. I can assure you of that. I am the least, victimized person in the world, and I still do it sometimes. And I catch myself, and I'm like, you need to stop that. And so I think keeping the larger picture in mind and the broad frame in mind is critically important, so that we may continue to do the things that we need to do on account of the collective. In this case, being a sniper. And by the way, they're still weird, but I like what they do. They're protecting us. And
what's Shaun?
a few other things that I'd like to kind of talk about is we've spoken about ranks, and all of us admitted that we never looked at getting ranks, and I'm taking it back into the professional context, just because it is applicable. And I think that at some point, what you see with people that are quote unquote aren't playing the game necessarily, or have an issue with the game and are going head to head with the game, is oftentimes they will be complaining about all of the things that they do not want to change by becoming the person that can actually change them. And so, and what I'm referring to here is promotions, right? Like, so you'll hear a lot of people complain incessantly about management this, management that, but none of them will ever apply to be management, right? And so the excuse is like, well, I don't want to be a part of this. Well, my reasoning is, if you are to change anything, you might have to be. And if the next guy, wants to change anything, he might have to join you. If everybody continues to not want to fulfill those roles, automatically those roles would go to people that just want the role. Not necessarily 100%, but it's very likely to be the case. And the competition won't be as stiff as it would be if the good guys were putting in. But I think it's important to understand that some people it's the intent behind why you're taking certain actions. So if you are seeking promotion, what is the intent behind that? Is your intent to make, your guys or your unit operationally ready? Is your intent to take things to the next level, to explore new TTPs, to do X, Y, and Z? And if that's the case, then that's a completely different ballgame. So there's nothing wrong with wanting to be that person, but what is your intent? What do you intend to do with that power? There is a saying that says, if you want to test a man's character, just give him power. That's all you need to do. And I just, toyed with those ideas. And finally, embracing adversity in the game of life. I think, to your point, Chance, earlier about having the gas attendant, realizing they're important, and having the people that bring your food realizing it's important. It goes along with all the other things that we take for granted. let it be our health or internal mechanisms or whatever the case may be, or when things are going well or when the kids are healthy and out. And as soon as something happens and you get hit by life, you realize, holy, this can go sideways, and it can go sideways quickly. And so I think, self-policing in that is very, very important. If you're navigating life thinking that you're the central piece and everybody else is an accessory to it, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it inherently wrong, and that's going to really cost you. So it is important to understand that there is consistent things happening around you that you need to be grateful for, and taking the time to recognize those things and question yourself and your outlook on those things will help you have those, those not buoys, but those flotation device in place when things do go sideways, because you are aware of what's going on around you and who's doing what and how are you able to do the things that you're able to do and how are they supported. No longer about you. You're muted, I think.
Yeah.
You're muted, Chance.
Muted. How did that happen?
Oh.
My apologies. We're just about at time here, and I would love to do another round and then do final thoughts, but I don't think we have the time to do it. So let's go down the line. We'll get some final thoughts on playing the game, and then we'll shut her down for the afternoon. But this has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you guys so much, first off, because this has been out freaking standing. Tip, I'm going to start with you. What's some final thoughts on
But to get me over quickly, I will. Right. So for me, it's across society and everything, and all our brothers in arms and sisters in arms. And I think the big thing is resilience. So if you're going to play the game, you've got to be resilient. I think resilience is it's such an important thing for the challenges, especially in the modern life and society. So if you're going to play the game, be resilient.
I like it. Dean, what about yourself?
I think for me is obviously obey certain rules, but don't be too scared to challenge other rules. And I think the final one for Tip's a sniper and a mountain leader. He's a glutton for punishment. He obviously loves being out in the cold, rain, and the snow. And I've been on the receiving end of that, and it's horrible. And also, good luck in the World Cup, buddy.
Oh, choose it.
Outstanding. Seb, some final thoughts?
I'll just take literally 30 seconds to send our thoughts to Frederick O'Brien's family and the peers. We know we've lost a Royal Canadian Mounted Police member earlier this week. 2 more were shot during an operation, so that's 3 shots, one deceased. And I just wanted to remind everybody that there is a way forward. We must hold a line, and the loss reinforces how truly honorable this profession is, and there is no other way. We must grieve, but also we must move forward. So I just thanks for your sacrifice. We got it from here, boy.
Absolutely. Shaun, some final thoughts?
Well, I'd like to add my thoughts as well to what Seb just said, and build on that by stating that those individuals were playing the game on our behalf. And so that game that they played to the best of their ability. But at the end of the day, sometimes the game has tragic consequences. But that game that they were playing, they played for us, not for themselves. We started with a solo journey, and then we talked about the team environment. Everything that someone does when they're serving their country or serving their city is on the behalf of the team that they don't even know that surrounds them, people that they'll never meet. But they're invested in the team game, not the solo game. So thanks for that.
Absolutely. This, again, has been a fantastic conversation. I do really appreciate you guys joining us, and I will be getting you guys on again very soon. Tip, it's been too long. I'm going to get you back on a more regular basis for sure. Dean as well.
I don't know if Shaun wants me back.
Dude, you're all clean shaven and looking all squared away. I hardly recognized you. What is going on?
I know. I've lost about 20 years. I'm 30 again.
Dude, you're already 25.
Need a translator if you get myself and Tip back on as well.
I know.
I was a little
I love
worried.
this. I must admit, though, Chance, I love this. So, being Stotty, this is just a great opportunity to catch up with you guys, but also with that honking piece of kit there as well.
Yeah.
It is an important moment, though, as we're all kind of chirping back and forth and having a couple of laughs now. We're playing a game right now. We're playing the game of friendship. We're playing the game of hanging out. We're playing the game of being cool with each other. Games are all around us all the time. And as we're enjoying this moment, these moments are available to everyone. I mean, anyone who's tuning into this right now, maybe later today, watching this exact moment, I hope that you had a couple of laughs during this show. And the laughs that are available to you in the future that you haven't created yet is as easy as doing this. Just find some cool people. Make your team. Have some fun. Create a game within your game of life. It's worth it.
100%, it's worth it. And I don't have a whole lot to add other than the fact that first you have to learn that there's a game being played. Once you learn that the game's being played, then you can build upon the rule set. And once you understand the rule set, you can grow within it. And you can do that with us every day here on The Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. GMO.